For this video, I'm going to take you through our top 8 strategies for reducing the administrative burden that sometimes builds up around a management system that we've put in place. Hi, I'm Andrew Thornhill. I'm the Director at IRM Systems, where we for many decades have assisted organisations in developing, implementing systems, management systems, right through to being certified. Keep watching right to the end. I'll take you through a little bit of a process you can step through regularly to make sure, to help trim the fat out of your management system. If we get into the content, one thing we see working as consultants quite often is where a company calls us in and they've got an existing management system, and it's over time it's just grown and grown and grown and become bigger than Ben-Hur, quite unwieldy to administer and got excessive documentation behind it. 8 strategies we'll cover today should help you manage that situation. So number 1 is, if we look at that management system we've got, and we've got a procedure in there, if it's not actually required by the standard or a regulation, or if it's not helping us achieve our compliance objective, what is that process in place for? And that really stands out as something we could revise, cut out, reduce right down. Because essentially, if they're not contributing to our objectives, not required, well, what are we actually doing it for? Well, quite often we see those kind of procedures self-identify themselves. They're the ones covering dust that no one's looked at in 2 years. Strategy number 2 is really something we really encourage right from the start with our clients, is to focus on the outcome, not just the process for getting there. Often the focus is on the process, or more often on, the procedure we've got to write and it's all about the procedure. No, out of that procedure, if that's around traceability and recall from a food safety perspective, or if that's around hazard and risk assessment from a safety management system perspective, well, let's start with what we're trying to achieve, what's the outcome we want, and then that actually helps us design a fit-for-purpose process and procedure to support that, because we know what we're aiming for. Really simple example, safety induction. When we've got the focus on the process, we even start to measure the process outcome. What percentage of staff have completed the safety induction? That's well and good. But what's been a better focus on the outcome will be, well, has the safety induction process been effective? So we end up with the outcome that staff in the work area, they know the key hazards in their work area and they know what they're expected to do to manage those hazards. That's the kind of outcome we should be focused on. A further option for reducing the bulk of our system is to integrate our management system. Now, this is a really important decision. There's pros and cons of this, but yes, if we think around all of these management system standards, they have quite a lot of common requirements. They all require internal audit, corrective action, management review, things like that. Now, if we've got a safety, environment and quality system, we simply don't need 3 different management review processes or 3 different corrective action reporting processes. Yes, we can, and there's no reason why we can't just use the one process. We can raise a corrective action in relation to any of those, quality, safety or environment through that. If I use the term integration, yes, the standards, ISO standards, actually encourage you to integrate your management system into your strategic and business level processes and your operational processes wherever you can as well. And by that I mean, if we've got some established process, the team already know how to test raw materials and inspect raw materials when they arrive on our site, then why do we need a great big procedure telling them what they're already doing effectively? Next tip is really around risk-based thinking, is to start thinking, well, across if we think let's stick with food safety in the example, where are the risks? Okay, where there's critical risks, that's where we're more likely to need some documentation to guide people on what to do. Lower risk areas, we don't need to over-document that, and that kind of thinking is totally consistent with the standards as well. Next tip, we've started to touch on it already, is understand, if you really read the standards carefully, right in the introduction and right through the standards, they encourage you to establish and implement processes for food safety management or safety management or environmental management, whatever it is. So the focus of ISO is actually on the process. An environmental example for incident reporting, well, what's our process to report an incident when it occurs? That's what we need to plan, manage, implement and sustain. It's not just a procedure, and that's where we can start to think, well, a documented procedure might be, or form, might be part of the controls we need to support that process, but it's just can be seen as one of not the process itself. It's not the only measure, but one of a suite of potential control measures we can have to make sure we report environmental incidents on time and consistently. There's a growing range of software out there to help your compliance management. Yes, that can really help in my experience, and we do point some of our customers towards those kind of options, because have a standard workflow where people have to go through the steps in a consistent way. And we often find around, if we think of accident incident reporting, we often work with companies who've got a 12-page procedure on it. By the time they take a software option, they've cut that down to half a page, and it says go to your software product, raise your accident report, and that's got a built-in workflow, mandatory steps, much more effective process. Next tip is really to focus on, when we're looking at the documentation we need, is to focus on improvement rather than just compliance. We see a lot of, here's a requirement we've got to meet, we must document something for it. No, if we think more broadly, how can we improve our performance? That's the broad intent of the standard anyway. If we've got let's stick with an environmental management system, if we can demonstrate we've got the mandatory documentation, really good environmental performance, well, we can have a pretty sleek and streamlined system to support that if we're achieving what we aim to achieve. Really big tip that's often overlooked is consider the audience. So number one, what's the purpose of a procedure? Is to guide people on how to perform certain steps they need to do consistently. So let's think about our audience, how they learn. Let's use language or visual elements that suit how they learn. People learn visually, not through a 15-page procedure. Even if they have signed off to say, yes, I'm aware of this procedure, it doesn't mean they've taken in that content and understood it. In short, focus on, give instruction where they need instruction. What do they actually need to know? Our big rule with our customers is cut out the waffle. And we often get engaged by customers, and you'd be surprised, here's a 14-page procedure, let's cut it back to what's critical. Oh gee, it's 2.5 pages. A little bit of a regular step or process you can go through to make sure your system's streamlined is really just to do an annual review and take that risk-focused approach we talked about earlier. Also think about the evidence of our performance. I mentioned incoming inspection and testing of raw materials. If we're going to decide, do we need a procedure there, if we don't have one already, or we're 12 months down the track, we did develop a procedure, we're now 2 or 3 years down the track, do we still need that procedure? Well, let's look at the evidence of performance. Have we been performing that process consistently, effectively? Is it detecting the kind of problems with raw materials that are not fit for purpose that we would hope that process to pick up? If it is, then we can make a choice. Do we need the documentation? So perhaps we can get rid of it, or perhaps we could just cut it down and reduce the level of documented guidance we needed, because clearly the team know what they're doing, they're achieving the outcome we're looking for. If you are finding this series informative, we encourage you to click subscribe. We've got a whole range of videos to help you develop the knowledge and support you on your journey to certification. Thanks for watching.